Shalom, Bethel family. Well, it is nice to be back from Camp Ramah, where me and my family spent a lovely couple of weeks teaching Torah and being together and living in a real observant Jewish community for that time, uh, full of kids and energy and committed adults. It was wonderful. It is also nice to be back though at Bethel with my home Shabbat family, and we had a lovely Shabbat in Shul this past week where we were able to reflect on the Torah portion and share a warm Shabbat together. When we were at camp, the theme for the learning that Tammy and I did was Hakarat HaTov, which means gratitude. But there's something very special about that term Hakarat HaTov. It doesn't just mean gratitude, it means recognizing the good, right? As a key to gratitude, right? Recognizing the good. And I want to relate that concept to the Torah portion that we studied and read in Shul this past week. That Torah portion was Devarim, the start of a whole new book, the final book of the Torah. But of course, most of the action of the Torah, except the very, very end, has taken place. And this entire book of the Torah is really Moses giving his last address to the people. It's a long address, but it is all his last address to the people. And the reason, of course, he's giving this last address is because he will not be able to lead the people into the promised land. He will not himself have the honor of entering the promised land. Moshe was told that he will stay on the east bank of the River Jordan, and Joshua, his apprentice, would lead the people into the land. The question is why? Why can't Moses enter the promised land? Now, the explanation we get in the Torah is that it goes back to the incident of the rock, right? They were in the desert. God commands Moshe to speak to a rock to get water. Instead, he strikes the rock. And we're told that this act of lack of faith, that somehow it sent a message to the people that Moses thought if he only spoke to the rock, he would not be effective. Because of that lack of faith, as a leader, he would not be able to go into the promised land. I've always found that explanation difficult. Right after everything Moshe has been through since the exodus from Egypt, both with people and with God, the challenges of leading this people through the desert, the idea that he would not be rewarded with entering the promised land is very difficult for me to understand. But maybe there's another reason, a greater reason for why Moshe can't enter the promised land. It relates a little bit to why the generation of the sin of the spies could not enter the land, right? The generation about to enter the land is an almost completely new generation. Only Joshua and Caleb will, of the generation who left Egypt, be able to enter the promised land because they had a lack of faith. Everyone else, when the spies came out of the land and gave a negative report about the chances of the Israelites to conquer that land. But while that's the reason we're giving, a lot of commentaries say, that generation could not be the generation to occupy the land, to live in freedom and create a new nation in the land of Israel, because they had a slave mentality, right? And maybe the same is true of Moshe. Not that he had a slave mentality, right? Moshe was never part of the slave nation. However, Moshe was leader of the people during a very difficult time as they made their transition from slavery to freedom, from a people enslaved to a people who were going to rule a land. And Moshe's attitude towards the people is very negative. In fact, the book of Devarim is full of negativity towards the people. As Moshe tells his history, it's a history full of the mistakes that the people made. That is clearly his perspective. And maybe he also could not, as much as he was our greatest teacher of Torah, the greatest leader in the history of our people, undoubtedly, maybe he was also, as every leader is, the leader for a moment, and that moment is past. And now a leader who can look at the people more positively needs to take over. someone who perhaps could do hakarat hatov, could look at the people and see the positive. When we taught this concept at camp, the way I approached it was I showed the kids, my students, a video. It's free online. You can find it. It's called Dove Beauty Portraits or something like this. And it's an experiment that the Dove Soap Corporation put together. They were upset about the way that ideals of beauty were being passed to women in particular. And so what they did is, and you can watch this, I encourage you to watch it. They invited women to come and they didn't know what they were doing, but they were interviewed by a sketch artist who could not see them. And he asked them questions and they created a drawing of the women, a portrait based on what they said. Next, before they came in the first place, those women had been asked to sit with a stranger for 10 or 15 minutes and just get to know each other. That stranger then came in and went through the same process, asked questions about the person they had just met, so that the sketch artist could create a sketch. And the result was amazing, right? And you would look at the portraits of the people who had described themselves, and they were dark, and they showed wrinkles and flaws, and they were heavier, and they were just sadder looking. And you looked at the portraits that other people had made describing them, and they were bright, and they were light, and they had no wrinkles, and they almost had a joy or a friendliness to them. And the point is obvious, right? When we look at ourselves, we also have a tendency to look at the flaws, right? We have a tendency to look at the things that we don't like about ourselves. And so I would show this video to the students, and then I'd ask them, when you look in the mirror, what do you see first? And we had some very serious conversation. I would ask you who are watching this, when you look in the mirror, what jumps out at you first? We think we're seeing ourselves the way other people do, but in fact, we are much, much harsher critics on ourselves. And part of the message of Judaism, of hakarat hatov, is to recognize the good, right, in ourselves and in the world all around us, right? And Judaism has all kinds of ways to help encourage us to do this. And the technique is gratitude. Judaism itself means the people who give thanks, the people who are grateful, right? Yehudim comes from the Hebrew root hod, which means thanks, right? To give thanks. So we are the people who give thanks. And the way we do it is not by looking at the little things that bother us, by realizing that we are made b'tselem Elohim, that we are made in God's image, that we, in fact, as being made b'tselem Elohim, are wonders of creation. And so in the morning, we have these morning blessings we do, Birchot HaShachar. We do them every day. When we say Birchot HaShachar, we thank God for some pretty mundane things. Right? When we open our eyes, we thank God for giving sight to the blind. It's this business. We open our eyes from sleep, we thank God for giving sight to the blind. It's a way of reminding us that the fact that our eyes see is a miracle, right? Whether you believe in creation or evolution or some combination thereof, it is amazing that our eyes work the way they do, but we tend to take it for granted. We look at our eyes, and rather realizing that the very fact that we're looking at our eyes is a miracle, maybe we see our crow's feet around the corners or something else that we don't like about them. Judaism says no. Every morning we get up, we thank God for our vision. Right? When we stand up, we say, thank you, God, who straightens the bent. What is this business? Every day I got to thank God for standing up? Yes, because it's a recognition that we have two legs that work, that allow us to walk or run or jump or dance or play. That is miraculous. The fact that we can balance, legs and feet are wonders of creation, but we don't appreciate them until they don't work anymore, right? We hurt a knee or a hip and we live with pain. All of a sudden, we're grateful for our legs, but it's too late. Judaism says, no, every morning you look at your legs and you recognize with gratitude how amazing they are, that they work. The truth is, Judaism even has a prayer for going to the bathroom, right? I mean, we're supposed to go to the bathroom. What could be more mundane? an act than going to the bathroom. But when we walk out of the bathroom, we say this great prayer that thanks God for putting all of our holes and pipes in the right places. Again, something that we take for granted until it doesn't work right. And then not at all. We realize what a wonder the fact that our insides work the way they are supposed to. What a wonder that is. Again and again, Judaism teaches us to give gratitude, to say thank you for those normal everyday things that we tend to take for granted, to recognize that as a creation of made B'Tselem Elohim, in God's image, we are beautiful, nearly perfect creatures. And it doesn't matter if we have some wrinkles or we'd rather have straight hair than curly hair or curly hair than straight hair, all of that we need to get past. And by giving thanks regularly, we can achieve that for ourselves and also in the way we look at the world. So much good out there in the world, so many other people doing good, so many ways for us to do good, so many ways to sense holiness in the world, the ones that are taught to us by Judaism and other ways when we change our viewpoint with gratitude and see the perfection in creation. It's all there for us. This past week after Shabbat, we commemorated Tisha B'Av, the worst day for our people. And even in the way we commemorate that tragic day, we see what there is to be grateful for. The fact that Judaism is still here, even if it's without a temple. The fact that we are sovereign once again 2,000 years later in the land of Israel. The fact that we can come together as communities and read the Book of Lamentations, come together as communities and reflect on how the lessons of the destruction of the temple and the siege of Jerusalem reflect in modern times, that people still live under siege, still suffer with civil wars that lead to starvation and refugee crises. All of that, not for the crises themselves, but the fact that we have wisdom to share and things we can do from the lessons we've learned through history. All of that is something to be grateful for. And when we can stop and look at the world with hakarat hatov, recognizing the good through gratitude in ourselves, in those we interact with, in our communities, instead of, as we have become so accustomed to doing, bombarding our worlds with the negative. It's not that there's no negative, but the good so outweighs the negative. If we would just step away from our Facebook feeds and the news bombardment who are making money off of feeding us the negative, and for some reason we can't stop and look away, when we turn with gratitude towards the world, look for the things to be grateful for, will completely change our lives and give us the ability to completely change the world. And I hope over these next several weeks, as we lead towards the high holidays and now the time of comfort and recovery, that we all find our way to look at ourselves with gratitude, to look to each other with gratitude, to appreciate our communities with gratitude, and ultimately, through our gratitude, through recognizing the good and the holy in the world, that we are also able to change that world ourselves. I wish you a very good week, and coming soon, a Shabbat Shalom.